Right guys, welcome back to the channel. So Dana White has just had a baller moment at a press conference at the UFC 295 press conference where a silly MMA journalist, I don't even know if this was an MMA journalist, has threw the idea over to Dana White of him cross-promoting with the PFL for a Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou fight. Now, I don't understand. I'll take it from this standpoint, right? Apologies about the noise. It's a blustery day out here in Ireland. It's absolutely lashing down at the minute. But listen, I had to make a video on this here. There's cars going by, and I've seen this clip, and I was like, I have to make a video on this. So I don't know if they've just done this for clickbait, knowing that Dana's reaction would be, crazy, or did they actually mean that question? Dana White tried to make the fight between Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones while Francis was in the UFC. Regardless of contracts, regardless of money, regardless of any of that stuff, Francis Ngannou didn't take that fight. They tried to make that fight and it didn't materialize, right? So why would Dana White choose to co-promote with the PFL? And let's call a spade here. Francis Ngannou only has to fight, I think it's once in the PFL in 2024, and that could be next December. I'm all for the fighters getting as much money as possible. And just on a little side note here, but I don't see how the PFL wins out of this. I don't see how they win. Did they just want the name? Did they just, maybe because they're getting an injection of money from Saudi Arabia, they maybe got the money from them, and the Saudis said, yeah, sure, get Francis Ngannou on the roster. Just his name alone will bring traction towards the promotion, possibly. But I don't see how this situation would benefit Dana White to even try to consider, even to fathom a cross promotion between the PFL and the UFC. Right now, Dana White, regardless of, I know Francis Ngannou's doing good things, he's doing big things, but it doesn't make sense for Dana White. And I'm led to believe that the reporter who asked him that question, or the journalist who asked him that question, probably was more than likely just doing it for a little bit of clickbait. Also, and here's the thing that people don't want to talk about either, and there was a commenter under the MacLife's video said Dana White doesn't want to give any more credit to Francis Ngannou. He doesn't want to make him a bigger name than what he already is. Francis Ngannou's doing his own thing. How does the UFC benefit from that cross-promotional fight? They don't. And you have journalists, reporters out there asking Dana White questions that are completely anti-business. Does it make money? 100% it makes money, but the UFC can do that with their other fighters. They have Aspinall coming up through the ranks. Aspinall's going to be getting the fight from the winner of Jones-Miocic. We're going to tip Jones to win that fight, but anything can happen. So Aspinall could be fighting in his next fight Miocic or Jon Jones. So to me, for pure MMA, I'm more interested in that. We know what Francis Ngannou is capable of. Who do I think wins a fight between Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou in an MMA match, in an MMA fight, sorry? I would say Jon Jones, because Jon Jones has never been beaten, and he's fought multiple different guys, and he's come up against multiple different skills, and he's always beat them at their own game. So I would say 99%, 10 times out of 10, Jon Jones beats Francis Ngannou in an MMA fight. Now, did the reporter or journalist didn't actually watch that far because I was sickened by the question. I liked the question for the clickbait aspect, but I didn't like the question for the reality aspect, because there's no reality in that situation. But were they talking about a cross promotion with the PFL for boxing? Now that is a little bit different. And it's still a no from Dana White. Dana White's never going to let Jon Jones go and fight Francis Ngannou in a boxing match cross promotion with the PFL. For the simple reason is, number one, he doesn't need to, right? Number two, he's not going to risk his guy Jon Jones getting beat by Francis Ngannou in a cross promotion boxing match with the PFL. He's not going to do that. Jon Jones right now is probably one of the guys up there selling pay-per-views. making the UFC lots and lots of money. So he's not going to do that. That's just silly. So it's completely absurd to think that there's going to be any type of cross promotion with the PFL. Under no circumstances will that ever happen. And that was a dumb question from a reporter that that I don't even know why he asked it. Now, if the reporter comes out and says, or the journalist comes out and says, look, I asked that question knowing the answer and I just wanted the clickbait, 100%. I probably would ask the same question just for the clickbait. But if he comes out and he says, I asked the question because I generally wanted to know, then you mean this guy has no brain cells, because obviously the answer would be no. It just wouldn't. You could come up with any type of money for that fight, and just on pure stubbornness alone, Dana White is not going to cross promote with the PFL, and that's just a fact. So Dana White absolutely obliterated that journalist. He absolutely demolished the idea of John Jones versus Francis Ngannou co-promoting with the PFL. That's not going to happen, and anybody that actually thinks that is stupid.